Oh my god, Rupert. Oh, I'm so sorry. Didn't mean to take so long. Can't believe I'm late. God.
Adam, I've been sat at my computer desk for 2 months waiting for you.
2 months? Are you joking?
It's been 2 months. It's episode 9. It's been 2 months.
I just went
You've left our loyal listeners high and dry, like Anthony Hopkins at the Oscars, sleeping through his Best Actor win.
I only went downstairs to get a glass of water. Fuck.
Mate, you need to sort out your priorities.
Damn. need to get a better alarm clock. Fuck.
So, you're telling me that what wasn't keeping you away wasn't the absolute adrenaline thrill ride that was the Oscars this year? You're telling me that's not what happened?
I have to say that is not the case, no. It was a bit of a sleepy Oscar season, wasn't it? And
all of that Hollywood magic wasted on you.
I know. Well, to be honest, I'm just still stung that they didn't nominate our favourite film from last year, which was Bad Boys for Life.
Oh, yeah.
And no nominations for Sonic the Hedgehog? What the fuck?
I know. Well, I mean, but it looked really legit for a bit that it was going to be those were going to be the options.
It was just the only two films that came out last year, and then they had to just rush out a bunch at the beginning of this year. There's absolute
society had to go and take lockdown seriously, and then it's like, oh, now we're going to have proper films coming out. It's like, leave it out, mate. Leave it out.
Where's my James Marsden Best Supporting Actor nomination?
No, Best Main Actor, mate. Come on, James Marsden.
Nah, well,
when it comes to actors, James Marsden is cream of the crop.
Yeah, but obviously the guy that plays Sonic the Hedgehog, who no one knows the name of, would get the Best Actor nom.
I'll have you know that I know him as that one guy from Parks and Rec, whose whole character is that he's annoying.
Ah, well, perfect casting then. Should have got the nom. What the hell?
He shouldn't have got the nom. He should have got the win. But here we are, high and dry. Hollywood has failed us once again.
And they will constantly keep doing that. So,
this is episode 9 of Internally Screening. It has been a little while. Life gets in the way sometimes. I am Rupert.
And I am Adam.
And once again, we are here to talk about some films. What films are we discussing today, Mr. Wells?
Well, later we will be discussing the incredibly bleak World War II drama that is Downfall, but we'll keep things light to begin with, and we'll start with a new film, Chaos Walking, which stars your boy Tom Holland, who is Spider-Man, and Daisy Ridley from Star Wars. So a nice Marvel Star Wars crossover. I mean, it's basically just like a YA film that didn't come out in 2010. Like, it's not your traditional 2020 film. I say traditional.
Say your mama's YA.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why it's coming out this decade, because if you look at it, it does just look like a sort of budget Hunger Games kind of Maze Runner rip-off type thing. Well, not a rip-off, but massively borrowing that aesthetic. So, story-wise, I mean, for those that don't know, and I would not blame you if you have not watched this film, it is. Well, it also stars your boy Mads Mikkelsen, who is, we have now established, one of our favourite actors. I mean, we always knew that, but we recently watched Another Round, and I don't know why we're not talking about that instead.
I know.
We're talking about Chaos Walking. We've made our beds. So, basically, plot is there's in the future we have like a distant new colony called like New World or something, which is incredibly inventive, and we have all of the people that land, the men that land on this planet, have all their thoughts portrayed sort of out loud in a phenomena they call the noise. So it basically means that no man can keep a secret, but all the women are unaffected, and we have Daisy Ridley's character crash lands into the sort of farm villagey place that Tom Holland's character lives, and there are no women left alive, all supposedly killed by some violent alien race. And therein lies the conflict. Space Girl arrives in strange lands and shenanigans ensue. So with that out of the way, Rupert, what the hell did you think about Chaos Walking?
I thought it would take a lot to make me miss the Hunger Games films, but this did it. I mean, I think that's clearly the bid, right? It's a Lionsgate film. They've run out of Hunger Games books. YA. It's clearly like one of those. When you're watching it, you can't help but kind of feel the business decisions being made behind its creation.
Yeah.
Which was kind of what I was like constantly trying to suss out. And yeah, it really feels. Well, it's one of those films that just kind of feels like a product. Like at every stage, they're kind of trying to just. It's kind of hard to put your finger down because it's kind of executed really, really badly. I remember this got like the most notable thing about this film to me and to a lot of people is well, not a lot of people, a small amount of people.
The people that watch this.
yeah. It was that Charlie Kaufman was originally credited with the first draft of this film. I can't imagine a lot of his stuff has been left in, to be honest. I imagine it's probably mostly gone. Apart from the fact that the character can't talk to women, which is very much his kind of thing. Yeah. But this film was just so boring. There is so little to say about it, despite the even for YA, the incredibly bizarre setup. I mean, I feel like YA often doesn't get enough credit for like the creative world building it can do. And if you just read the sort of synopsis for this, you'd think, wow, that's a really interesting idea. Yeah, I wonder what they're going to do with it. The answer is nothing. The answer is absolutely nothing.
It's unreal levels of dry, isn't it? Like in terms of, so like right out the gate, like the whole concept of the noise, I think, interesting on paper, would probably make a great novel, which I believe this is based off a novel.
I have heard people say the book is very good.
But, seeing how they execute it in this film, I don't even think it would particularly work in any film. You could prove me wrong very easily if you made like a great one, but I genuinely think this whole the way they use the noise in this film is exclusively as a tool for exposition, and from like the beginning of the film to the end, it is just non-stop like exposition dump. It's the classic sin of every character just tells everything about themselves and nothing is shown, and everything is so paper thin. Like the thoughts that are running through Tom Holland's mind at any given point are so like boring and monotonous. Like, oh, I hope no one finds out what I'm thinking. Oh, I'd like to kiss this girl. Oh, that's a girl. Oh, I've never seen a girl before. Like, in real life, I would love to see the random fucking shit that people would just be thinking about on like the streets. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Like it's such an interesting idea, but I agree. It's like something that's very difficult to execute visually. They basically do it in the most boring way possible. If you see the trailer, you can kind of get a hint of this. It's just this sort of CGI bubble around their head. And what's frustrating to me is, without spoiling anything, I guess, they kind of, at the end of the film, actually do something with it.
Yes.
Which is like, I was so bored by the film. The moment it happened, it's not like that amazing, but I was like, oh, like, you could have been doing interesting stuff with this the whole time. There's like only... this should have been introduced in the beginning as like, look, because I won't spoil it, but like, you know, that is what people would do, right? If this was happening, it would change the way people would think because people can see and hear your thoughts. So why are you just bringing this in now? And like, why is it not been used? And I agree. I think the key problem for this film is it's the most boring road trip film ever because you have two perfectly fine actors with the most boring characters ever, with next to no chemistry, just walking to a location through some woods. That
can I just say,
like 90% of the film.
The location choices as well are really dull. You know, like,
it's just some woods.
It
looks like it was shot in Surrey.
Yeah, exactly. It just looks like it was shot in someone's like back garden or something. Like, you know, like, there's some fields near Dave's house. We'll just film it there or something. Like, there's no like particular like spectacle or excitement to the visuals of this place, which means when they do like their sort of epic voyage from point A to point B, it's like, we've just left one set of woods and arrived at a clearing in another set of woods, and it looks identical. It's just very, and then the color palette of the film is very grey. Also, costume design. Can I just say costume design? What the fuck is going on? Like, there's no through line whatsoever. It's just like anything they could go, they go, oh, well, Mads Mikkelsen, we're going to get in a bright orange fur coat for no
that
good.
Was sick.
I mean, it's kind of sick, but it's like kind of dumb as fuck, right? Like, no one else is wearing fur. No one else is wearing fur.
They weren't on the same page. I mean, I think what they were going for with Mads Mikkelsen was like kind of cool, but none of the characters seemed to follow. So it was like, clearly it's supposed to be like reminiscent of westerns, right?
Yeah,
they're all riding around on horses, and he's got like a big hat and like a pimp coat. So like, I could see like the Mad Max western, but like more sci-fi-ish thing going for it. But then you just got Tom Holland in a tank top and Daisy Ridley looking blonde, I guess.
Yeah, and then they go to there's other people wearing like jeans and like flannel shirts and stuff, like they just walked off of like a totally different film set. Like the problem is not the costumes, even though the original costumes and stuff of say, I don't know, Tom Holland's character is pretty boring. It's like he's either in a tank top or he's got like a fucking raincoat on. Like there's some like sci-fi minimalism, maybe you could say, but in terms of like, loads of different characters are all wearing totally different aesthetics, and it's just like a really unsatisfying like mush for the eyes. Like there's no, again, it's a total lack of excitement, because instead of making an interesting creative decision, they just went, anything will do, and that's what they ran with. They just like that anything. In my
mind, I can't pick out a memorable shot from this film. I can kind of remember vague through lines of like, there's nothing visually special. And what's frustrating is this is from, I believe his name's Doug Liman. Yeah. Who's a pretty solid, if unspectacular director. He's made some good films before. I haven't seen Edge of Tomorrow, but I have a lot of nostalgia for Bourne Identity. Yeah. He's not like an incapable director.
Not at all.
And I don't think any of the performances in this film are outright bad. It's one of those films where there's so little going for it in the script, and despite everyone doing an okay job, it just makes it even more. It even makes it even worse, because if it had something really terrible, I'd probably remember it a bit more. But there's nothing in this that's like laughable, really. Once you get past the kind of quirkiness of the setup, there's nothing in this that's like, wow, what were they thinking? It's all just like, this feels incredibly calculated.
Yeah, yes, but at the same time, I do find much of the dialogue and the kind of inner voice of, the noise dialogue to be like unbelievably like dumb and basic, and
it's just so safe. It's always like, clearly the appeal for this film is going for that sort of fan fiction teenager demographic, where it's like, you got a real, like, Tom Holland's character is so boring. He's just really meek and wimpy, but kind of wants to do the right thing. That's it. Oh, and he's attracted to Daisy Ridley. That is his whole character.
Yeah.
And they don't even get a single good gag out of the whole hearing the thoughts thing, which you could do some really easy jokes with that. With like, oh, it's a man and the woman can hear his thoughts. That's like the whole concept of the film, right? And they do the most obvious one where he's thinking about kissing her, and that's it. That's basically it. And then him going, oh, she's so pretty.
And then she just gets annoyed.
So pretty, yellow hair.
And they don't do anything
so
with it. Yeah. He's such like a wet character, isn't he? He's just
she is so bland. She's like, I mean, I just want to know, is it like some kind of agent contract? Tom Holland is never allowed to speak in his British accent, but Daisy Ridley is allowed.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it might just be because now that he's known for Spider-Man, like he has to maintain Spider-Man. He has to maintain that character, that facade, I guess. Whereas Daisy Ridley spoke in her native accent in Star Wars, so that's people will allow it now. I don't know. That's some weird, calculated, producer boardroom shit. don't fathom
How many
that.
Americans do you think he is just American?
Oh, the majority of them. Yeah.
I reckon so. Because he's pretty good at his accent now. I don't know if he just talks in his normal accent anymore. I think he's just like that now.
He's just no. You know what? This is the same character. That's the thing. Is that this is a Spider-Man prequel. He goes back in time and, and becomes Spider-Man.
Should we just talk about spoilers? Because I just have so little to say about this. So in my mind, I can break the film down to like basically three beats.
Yeah.
You have the initial ship crash with Daisy Ridley, which is incredibly boring.
Yeah.
She's falling through the sky, and then it cuts, and the ship is on the floor.
And then everyone's dead, and they do nothing with it.
They meet, and then a load of boring shit happens. They go to like some house, and then there's the rapids bit, which is supposed to be really exciting, and is just kind of bland. And then his dog gets killed. By the way, apparently in the original script that Charlie Kaufman wrote, the dog could talk as well. You could hear the dog's thoughts.
You know what? At the beginning, one, that's an amazing idea.
That's so much better. Easy jokes. You could do the Pixar jokes.
But no. They try and get a joke in early, and they allude to the fact that he can hear the dog's voice, but not like it's never shown. So like, it was one of the earliest bits of dialogue in the film. He's walking through the woods with his dog, and he says, "Go take a dump. You don't need to ask. That's all you ever want to do is eat and dump," essentially. And so like, but then it's never mentioned again. Like, oh yeah, the dog. All the dog can think about is food and shitting. Again, that would be funny if you made something of it, but that would require a bold, creative risk, which is something this film is not.
Who would you hire as voice actor for the dog? I would hire Toby Jones and make him do the Dobby voice.
Oh, that's a fantastic shout. That is. I might go like really abstract and like not out of the box and go Richard Ayoade, just like someone like
that would be great. A Richard Ayoade
for it.
When you said abstract, I thought you were going to be like, oh, the dog is just like has Siri voice. It's
oh my god, that is
that'd be horrifying. But anyways, so the dog dies. Obviously, the moment I saw the dog, I was like, it's going to die.
Yeah.
He keeps talking about how much he loves his dog. Is dead, and it gets killed. And then the film ends with they get to Daisy Ridley's ship, and they have to like put some new batteries in it and fix the antenna like it's a fucking analog TV or something.
Yeah, I know. It
really
just plugs
stupid.
in. That's the only thing they have to do is like climb a thing
the entire
and plug
sequence,
it in.
The entire sequence is Tom Holland has to climb up a ladder or like a ship bit and then come back down, and then Mads Mikkelsen shows up. Never fully understood his motivations.
No,
really. I don't know why he even cared that they left, apart from the fact he wanted the ship or something. But so I was alluding earlier to the interesting thing they did with the thoughts. Yeah. So only really in the final portion of the film do we see Mads Mikkelsen sort of toys with Tom Holland because you can see people's thoughts as well as hear them by sort of making duplicates of himself and fucking with him. Which, it's so little, but at that point in the film, I was so bored. I was constantly having to like remind myself to concentrate on the film. I was like, oh, you could have been doing this the whole time. And then he meets an incredibly underwhelming fate.
Yeah, where so the spoiler is that the reason there's no women in the original town that Tom Holland's from is because all the men became suspicious and like. Didn't trust the women, so they just murdered them all. And then it's like Tom Holland conjures the image of all of the women he's murdered and like spooks him and calls him a coward, and then he falls backwards into a hole.
Ignoring how incredibly convenient it is that no man in the entire town thought about that once around Tom Holland.
Yeah,
ignoring
that's
that,
so good. That's such a good point.
Ignoring that, it is the most obvious twist ever. Because we know Mads Mikkelsen is the bad guy from the start, pretty much. Unless you're just unless you've never watched the film before.
Here's the real hint. The hint is that he's the only person with an accent,
and he's Mads Mikkelsen. So he's the bad guy. So, like, ignoring the fact that it's stupid in terms of plot, it's just the most obvious twist ever. Like, I didn't know the twist, and I kind of didn't even clock that it was supposed to be some kind of like big plot reveal. Cause
Yeah, I know.
it's like, I was like, yeah, obviously they killed the women. It's like, yeah, he's the bad guy.
And something that I kind of forgot until the end of the film was that they bring up this like sort of native race of alien creatures that are supposed to have killed the women, and then that's the big reveal. They're actually not involved at all. He has a fight with one of them, like sort of midway through the film. Nothing. He doesn't kill it because Daisy Ridley, you know, she preaches reason and he listens. But then
the character who then later kills Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah, it's true. But then those aliens never turn up ever again, like not once. And why
it has to be
include
sequel bait, which is just so optimistic.
Oh, please no. I mean, to be fair, the way they end the film is kind of sequel baity because it's like it doesn't end on like a final note. It ends on a kind of almost midpoint note. Like this whole film could have been shortened and made as like the act and a half of a different film. Do you know what I mean? Like, because it ends on this kind of offbeat of like the ship Daisy Ridley's trying to contact lands. They're setting up a base. There's like a little spark of chemistry between Daisy Ridley and Tom Holland, and then bang, finished.
Also, like, just what is it with ever since The Force Awakens? I swear, films are just terrified of the idea of there just being like a romantic plot line. Like, why do we not have that? Like, I mean, the characters had no chemistry, so I didn't care at all. But like, couldn't they like kiss or something?
Yeah.
It's like, why does it just not happen? I don't understand. The whole through, like, you just kind of cut it out because like, oh, you know, in the next one they're definitely gonna bang. But like, just give me something. There's like nothing to this film. There's no good action scenes. There's no funny jokes. There's no good writing. There's one interesting concept that barely gets used. There's nothing visual whatsoever going on anywhere, and you can't even give me like a cute romance or something. Like nothing. It just has nothing to offer.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. It's oh god. I can't get over just how annoying all the exposition is as well. Just like everything that comes out of the noise, every inner thought someone has is so like mind-numbingly like shit. Like I
just can't believe it cost $120 million to make this.
What?
Mm-hmm. It looks like it got shot for. Looks like it got shot for like $5 million.
That's unreal. They spent.
I mean, they
so
made
much
Get
money
Out.
on this.
They made Get Out for like what? Like $3 million?
Really?
Yeah, something like that. They made it for like $2 or $3 million, and like it looks so much better.
What the hell is this? Oh my god! I'm just
Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley that expensive?
they were like 60 million each, and then nothing went.
Well, where else did the money go? I'm pretty sure it was, like 60 million each, and we'll shoot it in my mate's backyard, and we'll get some CG done eventually. There's not even like for like with YA, it makes me appreciate, even though I found the Hunger Games films incredibly bland and like really boring for the most part. Like there was something there. It's like, okay, you have your conceit and then you execute it. Even if you don't do it very interestingly. It's like, okay, you got some actors doing pretty good jobs. Don't like every choice in the film. Generally doesn't appeal for me. Maybe I'm just too old for it. Whatever. With this, it's like nothing.
Yeah.
It's just nothing.
And when you know, when the Hunger Games starts, you're in like this kind of grim woodland and then like sort of impoverished like villagey town thing. But then they travel. They go to these like an exotic location, and then they're in the arena and stuff. Like there's a visual vibrancy and like change and progression and journey. This, they're in some woods, then they're in some different woods, then they're in a clearing with a big grey spaceship that looks really boring, with a climax that feels like it's just like a side quest.
The end.
Yeah. So
this film is like a side quest. That's a good way of putting it. This is a fetch quest. This is like someone making a film out of that mission in Skyrim where you go to the generic repeatable mission in Skyrim where you go to the guy at the bar, you say, have you got any missions for me? And he says, yeah, there's a big camp of bandits. And then you go, I'll go kill those bandits. You go kill the bandits, you come back and he's like, here's 200 gold or whatever. Except that's actually way more interesting.
Yeah,
There is
that's
way more
interesting.
complexity, and it's way more fun and interesting.
Yeah.
I would rather watch a film made about that specific side mission from Skyrim than ever watch this again.
So
2
what
out
are you
of
going to
10.
give it? 2 out of 10. See, I saw your rating on Letterboxd. You gave it a 3. You've changed.
Yeah,
your
but
mind.
talking about it, I'm angry now.
I would also agree. It's
frustrating.
It's a complete 2 out of 10. It's one
The
of the
only reason
blandest
it's
films.
one of those films where like it just washed over me so much. I struggle to remember this, like anything, and it's just I don't understand what they spent the money on. Why? This was in production. This was in pre-production and post-production for like 6 years or something.
Nah.
It's like, what were you spending your time on? It
my
was in
God.
production hell. It's been coming out for a long time.
Oh, if it's in production hell, that almost goes some way to explain why it's trash. Because I swear,
like-
any film that goes through production hell almost always ends up like being totally awful.
That's not always true though. I mean, Mad Max Fury Road was a production disaster, and that came out as one of the most memorable action films of like
All right,
the
fair.
last decade.
It's a bit of
So,
a generalization, but
Yeah, it does. You're right. It does often end up. But like, think of another production nightmare, and a film I really don't like. But think about Batman vs Superman. There's so much to talk about with that film. It's such a shit show, and there's bits that are like kind of good in it. This is just wallpaper.
And at least it has style to it. Zack Snyder's not. He's got his flair. And now everyone has decided he's actually peak Kino, but whatever, that's a discussion for another day. The thing with this is another criminal underuse of Mads Mikkelsen. Like,
yeah, man,
how dare you do my boy like this? Stop putting him in American films as the baddie that turns up for 5 seconds. I mean, he was in this more than he was in fucking Doctor Strange or something, but or Rogue One for Christ's sake.
At least in Doctor Strange, he had one okay monologue. That was it. But like, I would take Doctor Strange for all of its averageness over this, like every day of the week.
Yeah. 2 out of 10. Big steaming pile of shit.
Don't watch it if you value your time or sanity.
There's so much more they could have done with this concept. Although I still think having characters saying their thoughts out loud is inherently going to end up with like a muddled, kind of confusing storyline. If only they'd kept whatever Charlie Kaufman wrote for them. Do you know what I mean? Because he's a master of confusing plots.
Apparently you can read a script somewhere, so I'm kind of tempted to like look at it and see what he was doing with it. Because
that would be fantastic.
It would be some weird shit. Most crucially, we know we're probably not going to get a sequel, but if they did, would it be called Chaos Running? And then after that, for the third one, Chaos Sprinting.
Chaos Sprinting. That's
Pay me now, Lionsgate.
No. Because you do like you, or you could go the Dark Knight Rises route and have like Chaos Falling or Chaos Rising.
Chaos getting back up.
Right.
Chaos. Why do we fall, Mr. Wayne? Chaos, so we can learn to pick ourselves up.
What? So they just do endless chaos films repeating the dialogue from Alfred from Dark Knight.
That was such a bad joke. Right. Okay. So the film I recommended in the episode last year now was Downfall or Der Untergang, directed by Oliver Hirschbiegel. That's what we're going with. Hirschbiegel. That's how I'm saying it. It is a World War II film set in 1945 Berlin. Things are not looking so hot for Hitler or any of the Nazi party. And the film is sort of centres around not just Hitler, but although he is sort of... In fact, there's not really a main character to the film. It's kind of semi-based off of several accounts of Hitler's final days in the bunker. But the primary one, and the one you see footage of the author, is Hitler's secretary, who was hired a few years before by Hitler. And she is not really the protagonist of the film, but is there to observe. Yeah. I believe a lot of the script is based off of things that she reported. Because to be fair, this period of history in this specific scenario is actually quite mysterious. We really don't know, because the Nazis went to a lot of effort to destroy records.
Yeah.
Which you see in the film. It's very famous, just to get this out of the way, for one particular scene, a meme scene.
Yes.
Which you've probably seen. I imagine you saw this before. You saw that scene before, Adam.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Memes aside, what did you think of Der Untergang?
I mean, it's fantastic. It's a great film. It's such harrowing subject matter and a difficult one to tackle because very few. I mean, there are endless World War II films out there, but very few focus on like Hitler himself, let alone make him basically the core character of the film. So having him not only be this core character, but also kind of humanized in a way that very few pieces of fiction or accounts of the war have ever done is it's a fine line for the writers and directors to cross, because it's like you have to make a film that is compelling enough so that you feel like you care at least an iota about the outcome of what's going on, but you're also, that character is Hitler, the most hated man in history. So the fact that I watched this and I did care, and that he was humanized, and he was, I mean, let's get it out of the way. He's not a sympathetic person at all, but there is like a kind of tragedy that they give him in this, like this kind of internal dichotomy between a man who cares and a man who is like a ruthless murderer. It's a really strange one as a viewer to kind of get yourself around. But beyond that, it's just a like bleak end to the war that, like you say, you just do not hear much about. And the amount of people that commit suicide in this film is just horrifying. It's just scene after scene of people going, well, fuck it, like I'm not surrendering. And Jesus, yeah. I mean, you're right. It is that's kind of why I appreciate this film so much, because we have so many World War II films, and a lot of them, post Saving Private Ryan, it's really hard to do something that's post Saving Private Ryan and post Pianist. It's hard to do a film about World War II which feels like different, or is like covering something that you've never really thought about, or showing something that's really shocking. This is like shocking in a very different way, and it does ride a fine line. I know this film got quite a lot of criticism at the time for humanizing Hitler, and I think some people even said it was like Nazi sympathizing, which I completely disagree with. No, not at all. I
think the whole premise of the film is like the whole kind of tragedy of Germany in World War II was, how did so many people go along with like such awful atrocities? Yeah. And I can appreciate a film like Inglourious Bastards, or something like that, where Hitler is just kind of this cartoonish monster. But the reality is, at the end of the day, that he was a person with human desires, and he ended up becoming something so monstrous. Because if you treat him as anything other than a human, you're kind of giving him too much credit. And what I really appreciate about this film is it's kind of a beautiful deconstruction of this idea of the Nazis as this all-efficient, ruthless, and just massively effective kind of political monolith that were just so powerful and so intelligent in their kind of dastardly desires. Because every single person in this film, almost every single person, while they have their humanities, they're all bumbling fucking idiots. They're like, the film almost feels like comedic at points. Yeah. In terms of like how buried in their own euphemisms they are, and how completely ineffectual and pathetic they are. Like it's like, you talked about all of the suicides. It is very grim and bleak, and the film is clearly not going for a comedic tone, but at a point it is kind of nightmarishly, absurdly kind of funny how they're just they're just so at the end of their tether, they don't care, and then like, oh, I guess I'll just kill myself now. And you have like all these like kind of really weirdly nightmarish bits where they're kind of like partying, like the bit where they've gone to like some theatre, and what's her name? What was that? What
was it Eva Braun? She's
Eva
like
Braun. She's
they
like dancing
leave
on the
bunker.
table to swing.
Yeah, they leave the bunker. She's like, I don't want to be in the bunker, even though they're being shelled by the Russians. They're like, I don't care. Let's have a party. And then like they get shelled mid-party, and they're like, nah, keep going or some shit. And then they get shelled really badly, and then they have to go back downstairs. But
yeah, or like there's another bit where they go to arrest. I forget the guy's name. One of the Nazis who's
the one that's addicted to like
the druggy one. Yeah, I mean they all were.
Did they say crack, or is it something else? They can't, like heroin or something. I don't know.
It was probably opioids, or they
that
did
was
a lot
it.
of
I don't know why
amphetamines.
I don't know why I thought crack.
They weren't smoking it. I think crack you have to smoke.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought crack. I'm sure.
But yeah, they like go to arrest him, and there's this shot of them sort of going through this like ballroom where you've got like all these Nazis who know they're going to get slaughtered by the Soviets, so they're all just kind of turning into these like degenerate drug taking, like, drinking party animals, and it's kind of like this horrific hellscape. And I mean, another thing is, I feel like you could have labelled this with some Nazi sympathy if it wasn't for the bit where, like, one of the key things with like Nazism, in a modern sense, which is what you'd have to be accusing it of, because that's the context it was made in. It's a film in the 2000s, right?
Yeah.
It would have to have some level of like Holocaust denial to it. But there is literally a scene where Hitler is sat down speaking to a guy, and he says, there's one, he says, fuck the German people, basically. They're weak, and I think that the soldiers in the East are the future of fascism. And he says, my one thing that I'm glad I did before I died was that I confronted the Jewish menace or something. Yeah. And it's like, it's so on the nose. I don't really know how you could read the film that way.
See, I mean, I think there's a lot of hysteria around any kind of that. There's a lot of knee-jerk reactions when something like this comes out, or like because the thing to do is to turn them into monsters. And I mean, it's a cheesy thing to bring up, but the line from Harry Potter springs to mind: fear of the name only increases fear of the thing itself. In so much as having him as this monstrous figure makes him so much more frightening to people. He is like this like all-powerful, like demonic kind of figure, like he is feared throughout the land. But when you look at it in this film, which paints it what I think is a very sort of flat sort of just like a kind of very unbiased just representation of the facts that they have based the film upon, just like here it is. They show him to be a feeble, like psychotic, mental, failing mentally, just sort of husk of a man that's just forgotten how to lead. He's neurotic, he's paranoid, he can't lead, he's like an awful, ineffective,
he's completely delusional as well.
Yeah,
I love how he's constantly, that as the film goes on, he kind of bounces between being completely hopeless to, no, we will, we need to get the oil fields back, which is a real thing, apparently. He was, apparently, towards the end of his days, he became very strangely obsessed with maintaining these oil fields in like Czechoslovakia or something.
Right.
He just kind of bounces between like realizing the situation he's in to just kind of being completely delusional.
Yeah,
like,
and having all these wild goals. Yeah, like
oh no, Steiner's reinforcements will come.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah, where it's like, yeah, don't worry. Like, we've lost the battle. Like, nothing can be done. Oh, actually, nah. I have 3 armies in the bag, and they're going to perform the biggest pincer movement you've ever seen. And then he gets the call, being like, none of that can happen. They're all pinned down. We're doomed. And he's like, better go to blow my brains out, I guess. If this film had any level of Nazi sympathy, he would be this heroic, bold man that sort of, you know, and the Russians would be portrayed as these like really truly evil force that wipes him out. Instead, the Russians are barely in the film. They are just like an impending doom in the back, like a storm about to erupt sort of thing. This film is just a very frank, honest representation of the accounts given, largely from, like he said, the assistant, Frau Jung, or Juncker, I don't know. And I think through her character as well, we get this idea of, and it's kind of prefaced at the beginning of the film, like with a real footage of the actual woman saying like, how could I sort of forgive my young self for making these bad decisions? You know, like I thought it was going to be a great idea, and it was like the worst thing I've ever done, essentially. Like, and when she witnesses a lot of the awful stuff, like one of the most harrowing things, for a start, she is either like Hitler talks to her about like wiping the Jews out and stuff, and she's like kind of like, oh, like that's, you can see in her face she's horrified by it. But then there's the bit with Frau Goebbels and her, like what she's planning to do with her children, and like the look of the
as
horrified,
one of the most hard to watch sequences in the whole film.
Jesus Christ!
I mean, the fact that they hold like that whole sequence, the fact that there's like a less bold film would just show that shot of Goebbels, her shutting the door, and is it Goebbels? No, not Goebbels. Is it Goebbels or Himmler? I think it's Goebbels, actually.
Yeah, it's Goebbels, yeah.
Goebbels waiting outside the door.
Yeah.
But, like, it goes, and it shows her killing each of her children.
I mean, yeah.
And they definitely chose the cutest kids possible to make it just that little bit, like, more like, fuck.
Oh, man, and you know, like, in the scene before where they're, like, giving them, like, essentially, like, sleeping medicine.
That sucks, man.
And there's that one girl that senses something's wrong. She's like, I don't want to do it, and they like force feed her it. Like, oh my god! Like, because the thing is, they hint at that. That's the side of the, I don't know much about the history of this, so I don't know if that really happened.
It did, apparently.
Christ, they allude to it sort of midway through the film. Or maybe not midway through, but they allude to it fairly early on, and I was like, oh my god, they're not actually going to do this, and they kind of toy with the idea of her kind of, I don't know, just running away and abandoning her convictions, and then they're all, no, she's just set in her ways. She's like, no, life without, you know, the Führer is not a world worth living in. Honestly, oh my god, she is
one of the most hateable characters in the film.
Oh, 100%. Like, there is nothing.
Someone is literally like, hey, maybe you just like shouldn't kill your kids, and she's like, yeah, she says like, a future without National Socialism is not a future for them, and I'm just like, fucking cunt. What's really impressive about the film, and I'm sure we'll get onto this, like Bruno Ganz is like unreal in this film, but like, what I think is so impressive is how much character they managed to get out of like the general ensemble performance, because like I said earlier, there's not really one protagonist, there's like several. You know, there's only really two sympathetic ones. You've got Hitler's receptionist, and you've got the medic guy.
Yes,
that's really.
He's actually a bit of a legend. I mean, I won't go so far as to actually say it because he was a Nazi, but he does some cool shit in the film.
Yeah, he seems like a chill. He's a medic. I mean, you can't really hate on medics too much, even if they're healing Nazis. But like, what I love about this film is like, you look at like, for example, that meme scene. Like, the amount of character you get from all of their faces. Like, they don't say that much dialogue. Like, I can see all of their faces in my head right now, because not all of them have that many lines. But like, as an ensemble, they just managed to imbue it with so much character, and just through like facial expressions. Like, there's so many great shots of like Hitler going on some deranged rant, or just like kind of losing it, and just shots of them being like, you know, realizing how fucked they are, and like, it is kind of grim because they're all fucked, but at the same time, I do kind of find this to be like the blackest of black comedies. Yeah, it is kind of hilarious and just so grim.
Well, I was gonna say, it kind of reminds me in some way of like the death of Stalin, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, very similar subject matter, but obviously Death of Stalin is an overt comedy.
Yeah.
But the kind of the in some ways the comedy comes from them joking about how dark their situation is and just how ordinary and normalized it is for them at that point. And here it's obviously far less comedic, but in some ways there is like that parallel, because it's such an absurd situation they will find themselves in, and they're so ridiculously loyal to this sort of mantra of like never surrender, always follow the Führer's orders even when he's dead and gone, that like that's what leads them, so many of them, to just off themselves, because they like their ability to sort of rationalize and think sort of logically about the situation, and you know, the whole life goes on kind of thing is just out the window. It's like, nope, without the Führer, nothing. Like, and
it's kind of like a post-apocalypse film in a lot of ways, like especially that other subplot I forgot to mention with the kid.
God, with the kid, oh my God, that's
which is just horrific, that subplot.
My fucking God.
But like has such a great payoff, because I was thinking like, wow, they really don't show that subplot as much as I remember, but like the way it concludes and the way it wraps up is very neatly done, and it has some real payoff to it. The bit where he's in like the crater and there's there's like woman, it's sort of buried in the ash.
It's like, oh my God. And like, so like what, this kid is part of like a Hitler Youth patrol that's supposed to take out tanks, and the kid's dad early on in the film comes up to them, and the dad's missing an arm as well, so you know, he's like a veteran, and he's like, you should all just go the hell home, like what are you doing out here, you're all gonna get killed if you stay out here. And they're all like, you know, repeating the mantra of like, the Nazis are great, we're gonna, you know, we're going to fight for the Führer. And he's like, have you ever been to battle? No. So you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Go the hell home. And they don't listen to him. And then, lo and behold, there is a scene later which is really, really sad. Like, of all the of all the sort of deaths they do, this is one of the ones that stuck in my head most, where like the girl asks the boy, the sort of the teenage boy, to shoot her, and then he, horrified at what he's done, puts it to his own head. And it's just, they don't shy away from any of it. You see all of it. Like, it's not necessarily super gory or anything with its violence. It is in places. Anytime you see someone getting amputated, it will fucking linger on that shit. Oh my God, that turned my stomach. Like, man hacksawing people's fucking arms off, and then there's a bucket beneath him full of limbs.
Oh yeah, jeez.
Oh my God. But in terms of this death scene, like, it I think it's one of the few that has like sort of music over it and like no dialogue or sound effects, and it's like eerily poetic. It's like so like soul crushing, just seeing these children in this situation.
Honest, that girl was just such a Nazi. I wouldn't have had any problem shooting her. She's the one who's like, when the dad comes up, it was because she is kind of introduced in a way that is kind of comedic in a way. It's like a kind of, you're right, it's a very depressing ending, but like when she's introduced, it's to that dad character, and he's like, you know, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're not gonna win, like you're gonna lose, like why are you bothering? And she's like, we will fight to the last bullet, we will never surrender, you know, a surrender would be the only true loss or something,
right? And
she's like this kind of like impassioned Nazi. And like, yeah, she's the one who she says to the guy, she's like, yeah, shoot me, because like that's, I can't, you know, we can't lose. She's like such an impassioned Nazi, and I kind of like, you could read into it, because you have to think like, clearly this guy, this like teenage boy, potentially was just kind of doing all this stuff to impress her. So it's like, if she tells me to shoot her, like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
Kind of horrific. I mean, the whole film's horrific. I do also think the one of the key elements of the film that makes it so good is the sound in the film is like amazing. The you mentioned earlier like the Soviet artillery just like constantly like pounding down, like constantly just like shaking everything. There's a great bit where one of the generals, you see him like, the camera like follows him all the way down, and you sort of go from the top where the artillery's like literally like slamming down, and he's going past all these people like screaming and like being operated on, and then he sort of goes deeper and deeper into the bunker until eventually he gets to like the bottom floor where Hitler is, and everything's a little neater and more sort of prim and proper, and you can like barely hear the artillery. It kind of, it really is like, you know, it's kind of like the film feels like it's set in an asylum.
It's incredibly claustrophobic. Like, obviously the setting of the bunker, inherently claustrophobic, you know, the lack of sunlight and stuff, but when they're in the city,
a literal Nazi echo chamber.
Right, yeah. But when
it's like Twitter, but worse.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I mean, but even when they're in the city, right, like even when they're above ground, everything is so like desolate, and like you see civilians sort of in pockets, but then often they sort of rush back into their houses, and or they're, you know, anytime they're caught in the streets, they, you know, the artillery comes back for them. Everything is so oppressive. Like, it's just like, you don't ever see like the edge of the city, you don't ever see where the Russians are approaching from. You just see this kind of like isolated little corridor of you know, violence, and this oppressive kind of smoky fog around everything. Like, it's inescapable, and it's not just that they're stuck in a bunker. It's like they cannot go anywhere. And the nature of the situation is sort of reflected in the visuals. I thought that was, you know, very clever.
Yeah, the visuals are like absolutely excellent. It's like a very bleak color palette. It's like kind of greeny, sickly green and like grey, and then
it's very militaristic.
Yeah, and like when it's outside, it's like it could basically be a noir film. It's like so dark and shadowy.
Yeah,
and the film, you know, it does that. It does like the sort of, I guess it's a bit cheesy, but it really works. That, you know, it kind of towards the end of the film, in the ending, I guess spoilers, but you know, where she's like cycling out of the city with a kid.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you're sort of getting this greenery. You do get that sort of genuine sense of relief.
Yeah.
Where they're kind of back in the countryside.
I remember feeling like I could taste the fresh air when I was watching that bit, because we're just so used to like, this oppressive, destroyed urban landscape with just full of fumes and like, Yeah,
no, for sure. I feel like we have to talk about it because Bruno Ganz in this film is kind of, when I first saw this film, he is what just completely blew me away about it.
Yeah.
He's I haven't really seen him in anything else, I don't think.
No,
but he's a very, very well-respected European actor. Died a couple years ago, I think.
Did he?
Not last year. He was a proper method actor, and he really, really did his research with this role. Apparently, there's only one proper recording of Hitler's actual voice, recorded by like a Finnish diplomat, and because Hitler never wanted his true voice like recorded. Yeah, because obviously you can't really gather the way Hitler speaks from listening to his hundreds of speeches. Because that's not how you talk.
Right. Yeah.
And you can look this up on YouTube. Hitler has a weirdly deep voice, which you wouldn't expect. But he apparently basically just studied this and learned a lot about Hitler. Hitler had obviously, that if you've ever seen the film Valkyrie with Tom Cruise, you know he once nearly got assassinated by a bomb in a briefcase.
Stauffenberg.
Yeah, and you'll notice in the film he's doing that thing with his arm like behind his back because he couldn't stop moving his one of his arms.
Oh really?
One of his hands.
That's why he does that.
He does that weird thing where his arm is like kind of withered and hooked and constantly moving. That was completely legit.
Oh wow, okay.
And he is just amazing. Like his like kind of trembly, screaming, constantly shouting, and like I feel like you really. I feel like I'm IGN or something. It really makes you feel like Hitler. Like he you don't see an actor. It really does feel like almost like you've found some secret documentary or something with his performance. It's just absolutely on point.
It is that transformative. I mean, I guess I could say that of all of it. Like it was deeply immersive. The performances across the board. I mean, obviously you have to single out Bruno Ganz because for a start, what a difficult job that is. like
Bro.
playing Hitler has got to be up there with like one of the hardest acting gigs you could ever have. Because
I bet he
it comes
shaved that moustache off the moment it stopped shooting.
because it's one of those things. It's as I was saying earlier, like, you know, it's one thing for the directors and the writers to try attempt to even vaguely humanize and present Hitler in a kind of neutral-ish light. It's another thing to be the actor tasked with doing that. Do you know what I mean? Like, to live as Hitler, especially if he's doing method acting. That must have been fucking wild.
It can't be healthy for like a long period of time, right?
But yeah, everyone is amazing, and it kind of comes into what you were saying earlier about all of these, everyone feeling very distinctly characterized. I think everyone's mannerisms, everyone's like that, the iconic scene, you know, where he's screaming at everyone. It's such a great example of that, sort of the film condensed into a nutshell, really, isn't it? Like, I'm just blown away by this film.
Before we finish, I just wanted to mention one scene which is also just really horrific, and it's just come to my mind. The scene where, I forget which Nazi it was. I don't think he was a particularly
Oh my god, Nazi. I know what you're about to say. I can't believe I forgot this one.
He goes to Hitler and says, "Mein Führer, I've got a family, please can I leave Berlin?" And Hitler kind of offhandedly goes, "You don't need to leave Berlin. We've got this under control," because he's kind of in his delusional phase, and he kind of resents anybody who wants to like abandon Berlin.
Yeah.
And so the guy goes and takes 2 grenades to family dinner and just kind of pulls the pins under the table. It's like one of the most, because it is so disturbing. And this really happened. I had to look it up on Wikipedia.
I did the same thing. Immediately after that happened, I was like, no. You are fucking joking.
But am I bad for saying it is also kind of like hilarious in like how absurd it is that he did that?
In its extremity, yeah.
Yeah.
But like we were saying with a lot of the film, it's just like so the extremes of it are so ridiculous you can't even wrap your head around it.
I mean, I guess this is what I'm trying to say about this film. If I was to wrap it up in a nutshell for me, I respect it so much for like how little it pulls its punches for like such a difficult topic. It really doesn't ever feel like it's getting cheap or feel like it's trying to sort of softball you. The only real criticism I could have is that it kind of portrays Albert Speer, who was famously the Nazi who said sorry in the Nuremberg trials. He's the guy who comes to Hitler and says, "I've been working against you."
That guy. Yes, yes.
Who apparently that's basically just made up. There's no evidence to suggest that he did any of that. But he was a Nazi who said sorry, basically.
Right. So they had to characterize him as like ever so slightly more. Well, not sympathetic, but just.
Well, they do. They kind of make it. They kind of present him in the film as like Hitler's comeuppance in a way. Like he's kind of because he's kind of like fuck you. Basically, he shows up and he goes fuck you when there's really no indication Albert Speer would have done anything of the type. That would be the one L this film takes. Literally everything else is fantastic to me, and 9 out of 10. I love it.
Excellent. I'd go for an 8. I'm sure with future watches that I could easily bump that up, but just in terms of its first impression, I mean, there's just so much to like wrap your head around. But a fantastic film all round. I did want to just shout out that medic guy again, because not only is he one of the cooler characters who's like actually rational and it's like, why is everyone killing themselves and stuff, but he has some really cool scenes. Of him like going around trying to save people around the city. Like he's easily one of the most like interesting characters, I think.
I mean, easy to be the most likable in a film full of Nazis.
Yeah, true. But yeah, there we are. Bang. Podcast 9.
Wanted to mention real quick, Oliver Hirschbiegel, whatever his name is. I looked him up and I was like, this is such a great film. It's so well directed. Everything's great. And like, the only other really notable film he ever directed was a film about Princess Diana. And apparently, it's one of the worst films like ever made. And I have to see it.
Oh, wow.
I have to know just how bad it is. Who plays Princess Diana? Let me
do you want to do
up.
it for the next podcast?
It's on Prime. Naomi Watts, Princess Diana.
Oh wow! Is it just called Princess Diana?
It's called Diana.
Ah, well, of course it is.
So there's your fun little ditty.
Nice. Well, I mean, we can always, we can think about doing that one on the channel at some point. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. Maybe he just sort of maybe he hates Princess Diana as much as he clearly hates Hitler. And maybe it's just incredibly unsympathetic, like Downfall.
I see. It's a inside job by the Queen again, like just to besmirch her name further.
Oh dear.
But anyway, there we are. Podcast 9 only took us however fucking long. We, if you haven't seen Downfall, we both thoroughly recommend that you check it out. Mm-hmm. If you have seen Chaos Walking, I'm really sorry. We're here to talk if you need it. And
don't be quiet. Speak to someone if you've suffered from Chaos Walking.
And I guess it falls to me to pick the next.
It does indeed.
Ye oldie film for next time.
What have you got for me?
I think we should cover "In the Mood for Love" by Wong Kar-wai, and I have not seen a huge amount of Chinese cinema. It's a sort of field I'm not very familiar with, but I've heard so many wonderful things, particularly about Wong Kar-wai, and I'm just like really eager. Like sort of East Asian cinema has been really particularly gripping to me the last sort of few years, getting more and more into film. Like that's like, Japanese, Korean and Chinese cinema are all like so distinct and like I want more of that. I want more of that in my life.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it, but it's very, Wong Kar-wai is a very interesting director. He has like a very unique style. I'd be really interested to see what you think of it, because I mean, I've been desperate to watch it. First time I saw it, I wasn't in love with it, but like it's one of those films where there's a few elements from it that have really stuck from me. So I'm really interested to see on a rewatch how it might gel, because he's a very idiosyncratic director. He has a lot of his own sort of isms that very interesting and unique, and he's very visual. And I'm very excited to talk about In the Mood for Love. That's awesome. That's a great pick.
Excellent. We'll as per find some highly questionable 2021 film to go along with it that will not fit tonally whatsoever, but
we didn't get any Chaos Walking Downfall comparisons in this one. We're just not very alike.
Let's just chuck one in at the end for good luck.
What could be like it? Which was a more miserable experience? Really?
That's a good point.
At least Downfall ends on the high note of Hitler killing himself. Like, what's Chaos Walking got? It's like, oh, this is fucking awesome. Hitler dies. In Chaos Walking, it's like, oh god, I wish these characters would die, but they think they're going to get a sequel.
I honestly can't think of any parallels to draw between them. Oh my god.
They might be two of the most different films imaginable. As in, one is excellent, one is trash.
And okay, I'm going to give up on this. Thank you very much for watching. If you've been watching, if you've been listening, thank you for listening. If you are listening on Spotify, follow us. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, chuck us
rate us 5 stars.
Chuck us a review, rate us 5 stars, all the good stuff. And if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, all that stuff. I've left it too late in the video for anyone to have watched to this point. But anyway, thank you for sticking with us, and we'll see you again next time. Hopefully not in 2 months.
Peace.